Hello there. Today, we enter a classic mystery with Sherlock Holmes, where one quiet detail protects an innocent man from a terrible mistake. This is the story of a missing letter, a rushed accusation, and the clue everyone missed. Chapter 1: The Letter at Baker Street. The rain had been falling over London since morning. It touched the windows of Baker Street in thin silver lines. It made the horses move more slowly. It turned the street lamps into soft yellow circles. Inside the sitting room, Sherlock Holmes sat near the fire with his long fingers together. Watson, had just opened the newspaper when Mrs. Hudson showed in a nervous visitor. The man was Mr. Arthur Harrington, a wealthy merchant with a careful coat, a pale face, and the look of someone who had not slept. "Mr. Holmes," he said, "I have come because an important letter has disappeared from my house. If it is not found by tonight, a young man may be ruined." Holmes did not move. "Tell me everything," he said, "but begin with the quiet facts. People often bring me their fear first and their facts later." Mr. Harrington took a breath. The letter was a signed agreement. It promised money for a school in the north of England. Many people depended on it. It had been placed in a locked study at Harrington House. That morning, the study door was opened. The letter was gone. Only 3 people had entered the room after dinner: Mr. Harrington, his solicitor, Mr. Bell, and a young assistant named Samuel Reed. Samuel had been poor before Mr. Harrington hired him. He had touched the desk. He had left the house in a hurry, and his boots were marked with mud. Everyone in the house was already certain. Samuel Reed had stolen the letter. Holmes looked at the rain on the window. "When everyone is certain too quickly," he said, "the truth is usually standing in the corner, waiting to be noticed." Then he rose, reached for his coat, and asked me to bring my hat. Chapter 2: The Perfect Suspect. Harrington House stood near a quiet square, tall and serious behind black iron rails. The servants moved softly. The family spoke in low voices. Even the dog, an old brown spaniel named Henry, lay near the kitchen door as if he understood that trouble had entered the home. Samuel Reed was waiting in the hall. He was no more than 22. His hands were rough from work, but his collar was clean. His eyes were tired in a way I knew well, the tiredness of a man who has been judged before he can speak. "I did not take it," he said. Mr. Harrington looked away. Mr. Bell, the solicitor, stood beside the study door. He was a thin man with a neat beard and a voice that never rose. "The facts are painful," Mr. Bell said. "Mr. Reed was alone in the study for 5 minutes. The window was found open. His boots were muddy. He asked last week for an advance in wages. A poor young man, a valuable letter, and an opportunity. I'm afraid the conclusion is natural." "Natural," Holmes said, "is not the same as true." We entered the study. It was a handsome room with dark shelves, a large desk, a coal fire, and heavy curtains. The window opened toward a narrow garden. Beneath it, the wet earth showed several confused marks. Mr. Bell pointed to them. "There, Mr. Holmes. The thief escaped through the window." Holmes bent down, not to the footprints, but to the latch. He touched the metal lightly. Then he looked at the curtain cord, the carpet, the desk, and the small brass clock above the fireplace. "Mr. Reed," Holmes asked, "why did you leave the house in a hurry?" Samuel swallowed. "My sister was ill. A message came. I ran to the cab stand." "And the mud?" "From the square, sir. I stepped into the road to help a driver whose wheel was caught." Mr. Bell smiled without warmth. "A generous story." Holmes turned to him. "Some stories are generous because people are." Then he knelt near the window and studied the floor again. For a long moment, The room was silent except for the rain. Chapter 3. The Room That Lied. At first, the study seemed to tell a simple story. The letter had been on the desk. The assistant had been alone. The window was open. The mud was visible. The poor man needed money. It was the kind of story that human minds like because it is easy. But Holmes did not trust easy stories. He asked each person to repeat the evening. Mr. Harrington said he had placed the letter inside a blue envelope and left it on the desk after dinner. Mr. Bell had come in to review another paper. Samuel Reed had entered later to bring a list of addresses. After that, Mr. Harrington had locked the study and gone upstairs. In the morning, the letter was gone. "Who opened the room first?" Holmes asked. "I did," Mr. Harrington said. "And you found the window open?" "Yes." "Was the rain falling then?" "It had rained all night." Holmes looked at the window sill. It was clean. Not dry, exactly, but clean in a strange way. No wet leaves, no dark line of dirt, no splash on the carpet below. Then Holmes walked to the old spaniel by the kitchen door. He lowered his hand, and the dog lifted his head with gentle trust. "A loyal animal," Holmes said. "Very loyal," said the cook. "He barks at strangers, sir. Too much, sometimes." "Did he bark last night?" "No, sir, not once." Mr. Bell coughed. "Surely the dog is not the matter." "On the contrary," Holmes said, "the dog is the only witness who has not tried to impress us." He returned to the study and stood still. Then he pointed to the desk. "The blue envelope was here?" "Yes," said Mr. Harrington. "And the lamp was here?" "Yes." Holmes touched the lampshade. A faint line of fresh wax marked its lower edge. "It was small. I had not noticed it. No one had." "A candle was held too close," Holmes said quietly. Mr. Bell folded his arms. "Many people use candles." "Yes," Holmes said, "but not all people use them to read a letter they claim they never saw." The solicitor's face changed only a little, but Holmes saw it. Chapter 4. The Clue Everyone Missed. Holmes asked for the household candles. Mrs. Mason, the housekeeper, brought a tray from the pantry. Most were ordinary white candles, but one was shorter than the others and had a dark blue mark near the base. "Where was this used?" Holmes asked. Mrs. Mason hesitated. "That candle was from the hall table, sir." "Who carried it?" "I cannot say." Holmes took a small piece of paper from his pocket and rubbed the blue mark. It left a faint color on the page. "Envelope dye," he said. Mr. Harrington looked confused. "I do not understand." Someone held the blue envelope against a candle. The heat softened the seal. The dye touched the wax. The letter was opened carefully, read, and closed again. "But then it was stolen," Mr. Bell said. "Was it?" Holmes asked. He walked to the fireplace. There were ashes in the grate, but the letter had not been burned. Holmes used a small metal tool to lift a thin gray piece. "This is not writing paper," he said. "It is a wrapper from imported tobacco. Someone wanted us to see ashes and imagine a destroyed document." Mr. Bell said nothing. Then Holmes turned to the dog. If a stranger came through the garden window, Henry would bark. If Samuel Reed climbed in from outside, Henry would bark. If a thief ran across the wet earth, there would be real rain marks inside the room. He pointed to the windowsill. "There are none." The room had lied, but badly. The open window was theater. The mud was borrowed from Samuel's boots. The ashes were a suggestion. The missing letter had never left the house. "Then who took it?" Mr. Harrington whispered. Holmes looked at the solicitor. "The person who knew its value, knew the room, knew the dog, and had a reason to delay the agreement. Mr. Bell, would you be kind enough to open your leather case?" Mr. Bell's hand tightened around the handle. For the first time, his calm voice failed him. Chapter 5. A Truth in the Leather Case. Mr. Bell refused. Holmes did not raise his voice. That was one of his powers. When other men became louder, he became clearer. "You may refuse me," he said, "but you cannot refuse the police once they arrive." Mr. Bell opened the case. Inside were contracts, folded notes, a silver pen, and a small inner pocket. Holmes reached for it and removed a blue envelope, sealed again but slightly uneven at one corner. Mr. Harrington took one step forward. The letter. Samuel Reed closed his eyes. Mr. Bell's story came apart quickly. He had invested money in a company that would lose if Harrington funded the school project. He did not want to destroy the agreement forever. He wanted to delay it, create confusion, and pressure Harrington to change his mind before the deadline. Samuel Reed had been useful because he looked easy to accuse. Poor, young, nervous, in the wrong room at the wrong time. "You thought the world would believe the simple story," Holmes said. Mr. Bell looked at Samuel and then at the floor. "Most people do." For a moment I felt the weight of that sentence. Most people do believe the simple story. Not because they are cruel, always, but because they are tired, afraid, or too ready to turn a person into an answer. Mr. Harrington was ashamed. "Mr. Reed," he said, "I have wronged you." Samuel did not answer at once. He looked around the room where everyone had suspected him. The apology was real, but the pain had already happened. "I only wanted to be trusted," he said. Holmes stood by the window, watching the rain soften over the garden. "Trust is not proved by never asking questions," he said. "It is proved by asking the right ones before we condemn." The letter was safe. The agreement could still be sent. But something in the house had changed. Chapter 6. The Cost of Being Certain. On the way back to Baker Street, the rain stopped. London seemed brighter, but my mind stayed with Samuel Reed. "Holmes," I said, "you saved him from prison." "Perhaps," Holmes answered, "but not from the memory of being accused." He was right. A false accusation leaves a mark even after the truth appears. People may say, "It is finished now," but the person who stood alone in the room may carry the moment for years. "The evidence against him looked strong," I said. "It looked convenient," Holmes replied. That word stayed with me. Convenient. The muddy boots were convenient. The open window was convenient. The poverty was convenient. The nervous face was convenient. But truth is not always convenient. It often asks us to slow down when we want to finish quickly. Holmes had no patience for laziness dressed as logic. He could forgive a person who made a mistake after honest work, but he disliked the comfortable mind that stopped at the first answer because it saved effort. "A clue is not a verdict," he said. "It is only an invitation to look again." Back at Baker Street, Holmes placed his wet gloves near the fire. "Watson, the important clue was not the wax or the ashes or even the dog. What was it then?" "The speed," he said. "The speed with which everyone accepted the same answer." He looked at the violin in the corner, then at the darkening window. When a whole room rushes toward one conclusion, look in the opposite direction. There you may find the fact that has been left alone. I wrote those words later that night because I knew they were larger than the case. Chapter 7. What Holmes Really Saw. The next morning, a note arrived from Mr. Harrington. The school agreement had been delivered in time. Samuel Reed had been offered a better position. Mr. Bell would face the consequences of his actions. Holmes read the note and passed it to me without comment. "You are not pleased?" I asked. "I am pleased that the letter is safe," he said, "but I am never pleased by how easily a crowd can become certain." He picked up the newspaper. Then he paused. "Still, Watson, there is hope in this case." "Hope?" "Yes." Mr. Harrington apologized in front of the same people who heard the accusation. That matters. A private apology cannot always repair a public wound. I thought of Samuel standing in the hall, no longer a suspect, but not yet free from the feeling of shame. Perhaps that is why Holmes worked so hard for facts. Not because facts were cold, but because facts could protect the warmest parts of a life, a name, a future, a place among other people. The world often asks us to judge quickly. A headline, a rumor, a first impression, a convenient explanation. But the Sherlock Holmes lesson is not simply to notice more. It is to pause before certainty becomes cruelty. The clue everyone missed was not hidden under the desk. It was not locked in a drawer. It was waiting in the silence of an old dog, in the clean windowsill, and in the simple question no one wanted to ask. What if we are wrong? That question saved Samuel Reed. And sometimes it can save us from becoming unfair in the name of being sure. Maybe the real mystery is not how Holmes found the truth, but why everyone else stopped looking. This was another story from the English Vault. I will see you in the next one.